Alright, so what exactly is object-oriented programming at its basics? For simplicity, we can define object-oriented programming as a form of programming that allows you, the programmer, to represent real-life objects in your code relatively easily. So, let's take a minute to think of what makes up objects in real life. Generally, we can think of objects being comprised of two main parts. There are the physical attributes of the object, and then there are the specific functions of that object, essentially what the object does or what it can do. Attributes can be thought of as the data of your object. In real life, it is what makes up your object in a physical sense. These are the things like the number of legs on an animal, the number of calories consumed so far, or the age of a person. Functions are very simply the things that your object does or can do. People can eat food, dogs can bark, and bikes can be ridden. Very simple. In terms of programming, functions typically utilize the attributes of the object, and often other parameters in order to do something. This can even mean updating the values of the attributes. Functions will often also be referred to as methods. Let's take, for example, a simple car that we would like to represent in code. We would start by defining the car class. The class will represent all of the code for any car object we create. Think of the class as the place that defines your object's attributes and functions. So, why don't we define some of the basic attributes and functions we want our car to have? A car will have a certain mileage. It would make sense if a completely new car started out with 0 miles. Depending on the specific car, each make and model will have a certain gas mileage or miles per gallon. A car will have a certain amount of gas in the tank, and of course, a car that's moving has a certain speed to it. Now let's look at some of the general functions that these cars might have. Cars can of course drive. You can fill a car with a certain amount of gasoline. Finally, we might want to apply the brakes to our car to stop it from driving. Notice how we don't need to be concerned about our programming language or syntax or anything else specific to programming just yet. We are just focused on making sure we represent our objects well. These things are pretty universal among object-oriented programming languages. Let's take a look at what a car's drive method might look like. If we have the car drive 5 miles, our drive method should most likely increase the mileage by 5 miles, update the car's speed to some value, and decrease the amount of gasoline in the car based on the car's specific gas mileage. It should start making sense how methods and attributes relate to one another. Now, what ties these ideas together is the connection between class and object. Let's think about it. Because the class contains the data for any object, it should make sense that whenever we create a new object, we are actually creating an instance of that class. All of the data for that object is completely its own. If we were to call a method on that object, it would affect only that one object. And finally, it should make sense now that the object only knows what is given by its class. Think about it. An object of type dog shouldn't know how to drive, and you shouldn't be able to check how much gas is left in a cat object. And that's all you need to know to understand the very basics of object-oriented programming. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.